as I had mentioned before, Gav has a bee in his bonnet with Wolfie. And as much as it might be about the fact that Wolfie really does just, and for a start, Wolfie does everything that Gav professes to be about. He actually does go out, and every single thing he does is practical, it's repeatable, and it's verifiable. It provides real data from the real world. It's everything that Gav preaches but never does. So, for Gav to actually have a problem with Wolfie in the first place, again, tells you what a fake piece of shit he is. Because even though Wolfie doesn't say the earth is flat like he would love for Wolfie to say, which therefore in his mind makes him an enemy, which is something I want you to also remember, because there's a clip that I'm going to play after this, which if anybody has been able to keep track of all the shit I'm saying and then go back and watch this clip, you'll see the relevance of it. But if this were the case, that there was a real sort of genuine intellectual desire to engage in a philosophy that involves people taking the time to go and do practical examination of the real world, then it really shouldn't matter whether you agree with that person's findings or not. There should still be at least some level of respect for the fact that somebody is going out and doing things for themselves and actually examining the real world and coming back and sharing their information. And the things that they're doing are repeatable as well, so even if you do disagree with them, you can still go out and then verify or falsify it for yourself. So they're still doing the right thing, even if you don't agree with the results, if that was truly your philosophy in life. But no, of course not. Gav is just a fucking child, an idiot who wants to be part of a cult where he's seen as a fucking genius at the head of it. So rather than actually be a man, rather than actually have any genuine integrity, some intellectual honesty, what Gav does is act like a fucking child and piss and moan about Wolfie and call him names and complain. And yet, again, what does he do himself? Nothing. He sits in his little echo chamber and just runs his little face flaps off. So, total fucking hypocrisy again and again and again with this idiot. So this video of Wolfie's, I'm recommending that people who maybe haven't looked at it or maybe haven't seen the conversation I'm going to refer to, if you've got any interest in actually seeing what Gav's all about, this is one of the places you can go and get a feel for it that's kind of historic now and not just recent stuff. I just want to make sure as part of this series highlighting what a little prick Gav is, that this kind of information doesn't go that this information doesn't get missed. So from 2 years ago now, Wolfie did a challenge, a friendly challenge to all Flat Earth believers, and it was basically just try and create a flight plan using a Flat Earth. We don't need to watch the video. It takes a bit of scrolling, but if you go here, and I'll leave the link for it, and scroll down, eventually you will find a comment by Vortex Puppy, which is Gav. So this is it here. Vortex Puppy, it says it's a year ago. I think it's more than a year ago now. And as you will see, the very first thing he refers to from Wikipedia on Sphere and quotes it. So this is, something I've been pointing out while I've been working my way through this, is that every time you see Gav refer to something, it's pretty much always Wikipedia. And for me, that's a sign as well. If the guy had any kind of academic inclination, he would have far better sources to rely on for his information, but it's always straight to Wikipedia. We've also seen that when he produces his own documentation, it's never really his own documentation. He's borrowing information from other sources. So, combined with the Wikipedia, the Socratic method, the Robotham, Zetetic Astronomy, what we get is this picture of someone who's a pretend academic, who has no information, no learning of his own. He has to refer to third parties, and his third party choices are, on the whole, popular trash, if you like. Now, not to say that Wikipedia can't be useful. All I'm saying is that if you look at it from an academic standpoint, that's more the web page for the common sort of layman to go and find stuff out. So for me, it's a big red flag when somebody claims to be more intelligent, and when you look at overall the information they're providing, it's always second, third-hand information from other sources that he's merely repeating, and the sources themselves are what you would class as questionable, at least to some degree, and certainly not what you would consider proper academic sources. And more importantly, that he has to refer to these sources at all, because if you yourself are learned in a subject, you would merely need to explain yourself with information, with knowledge that you have. I mean, I don't refer to Wikipedia. Very rarely. I think I've mainly used it to show something like the focal height of a lighthouse or something like that. But when I put a video together talking about a certain subject, I do the work myself, and it comes from a position of understanding a subject and then finding a way to explain it in the video. You know, I do the thing for myself. It comes from me, from, you know, accumulated knowledge, from practical knowledge, whatever it might be. But I don't go running to all these different websites. I don't go running to Wikipedia to give me the information I need. And I think it's a big red flag for anybody who tries to portray themselves the way Gav tries to portray himself, to have that kind of reliance on those kind of sources. Now, I'm sorry for detracting there, but it's a point I've been trying to make as I've led up to this, and I wanted to make sure I didn't forget it. So that's something I want you to consider as well. And then finally, as I was getting at, just read this thread. It's to me, this will tell you everything you really need to know about Gav. I think the thing with Gav is that at some point, sure, he's done some mathematics and he does understand some concepts and so on. And certainly some of the information that he's using here is beyond my level of comprehension when it comes to mathematics, which I have never claimed to have a great grasp of it. But my point is that for all that he says stupid things, he uses diversionary tactics, he's very fucking sneaky and underhanded, and essentially, although the language being used or the concepts being invoked may be more technical than your average flat earther, the overall way that the argumentation is handled, it's just like every other flat earther, where it ultimately comes from a position of bias and trying to push your own idea, and the idea that the person you're arguing against is inherently false, rather than dealing with the information itself and proving your point. At no point in this entire discussion does Gav ever prove himself. He keeps trying to say, well, you could do something this way, you could do something that way, you can swap this for that, and things like this. But he never actually comes back with a real working example that he's done for himself, and he never ever responds to the actual challenge, as you'll see Wolfie keeps trying to push him on, which is to produce this flight plan. He just keeps doing everything he can to avoid creating the flight plan, and keeps complaining to Wolfie that it's a red herring, because he can find a 5-step way of switching between localised planar geometry to 3-dimensional spherical geometry. But honestly, I would advise reading it. It's an interesting thread, in my opinion, and Andy Wolf and Wolfie absolutely own Gav on this thread on every aspect, and you can see the difference between a person who understands the subject, Wolfie in the case of global navigation in the air, and Andy in the case of global navigation on sea. They are very knowledgeable in the subject, and it shines through, and you compare that to the things that Gav is saying, you will see the difference. Now, I did eventually jump into this thread, and I'm no suggesting you read it to see what I said to him. It's the whole conversation that matters to see how he dealt with it. So I will leave that link. I hope that some of you do go and read it. It's a long read, but I think it's worth it, and it will give you a fuller idea what you're dealing with. And just to bring this back round to the point again that's been made overall, if you take some of the information that does come from Gav here, it shows that there's a certain amount of mathematical comprehension going on in the guy's brain. And if that's the case, you can start narrowing down the options about where he's coming from. Now, again, I think it's sort of a combination. He certainly thinks he's smarter than he is. But to believe that this guy isn't also deliberately deceiving people, I think you would need to be incredibly naive. If he can understand some of the concepts he's pushing within this thread, and then produce documents like that one claiming that you can, with something so stupid like trying to claim that being closer to the surface, all of a sudden you can invoke this idea that the lower half of your vision subtends its own individual angle of part of an object, and mixing up the horizontal and vertical angles, and not understanding the left to right curvature on a sphere, and not understanding the problem with the Earth having far more mass than an individual mountain, and so on and so on. It's pretty clear that there's just no way he couldn't understand these simple concepts that he seems to be wrong on all the time, and that tells you that the guy is fake as fuck, a lying piece of shit, a deceiver. So now we'll take a look at this clip that I want to finish off with, a little speech by Gav, and when you take everything that we've been talking about into account, you'll see what a pathetic little hypocrite this guy truly is.
You should be on the team of objectivity. That's
truth. Truth. Yep. For the love of the truth.
Exactly.
That's what people should be doing this for, and there's no other fucking reason.
Yeah.
Because I don't give a shit. I don't talk much about where I've been or where I've come from, but nothing else matters, right? I've made $1 million, I've lost $1 million, yeah. I've had my ups and downs in my life, yeah, and none of it means a fucking shit to me apart from finding out the truth of where I am. Nothing is more important to me.
Empieces nada.